Yeah, so I thought we can start with a few couplets first, and then later we can go to a few songs by Kabir, bhajans by Kabir also. So today I wanted to start with this one. It says, "वाद विवाद मत करो, करो नित एक विचार, नाम सुमिर चितलाए के सब करनी में सार." So in English it is translated as, "Do not uh, argue or discuss. Think only one thing. Remember God with total devotion, the essence of all doings." So let us maybe take a pause and then we can share our reflections on this. Yeah, so whenever anyone is ready, any reflections, any insights, just unmute and share.
मैं बोल सकता हूँ?
Yes, please go ahead. Yeah.
बहुत सिंपल है, बहुत जो मेरी छोटी सी बुद्धि है उसमें यही है कि हम लोग जो बात करते रहते हैं दिन भर की, मेरा धर्म ऐसा है या मैं ऐसा हूँ, तूने ये करा, मैंने ये करा, मैं बड़ा हूँ तू छोटा है। बस एक ही विचार वो कबीर दास जी कह रहे हैं मन में रखिए कि परमपिता परमेश्वर का या राम का नाम जो भी लेता है या जिसका भी नाम लेते हैं उसका नाम लो और अपने कर्म अच्छे करो। कर्म कर्म में ही सार है। जिसके कर्म अच्छे हैं वही आदमी, वही धर्म, वही चीज, वही सब चीजें सही हैं। बाकी जैसे कर्म करेंगे वही सब चीज मेन है। मैं इसमें बस यही कहना चाहता हूँ, मेरी जो छोटी सी बुद्धि है उसमें मैं यही समझ, कर्म प्रधान है, कर्म अच्छा करें।
Thank you, Ravi ji. Anyone else? So why not to put our head in arguments and discussions? Why not to go there? There must be something there why he warns us not to go there. And what are we really trying to prove by those arguments and discussions? Because definitely some kind of trying to prove game goes on whenever we enter into any argument, any discussion. So why not go there, and where to go if not there?
Hi, Monica. Hi, everyone. I see that it's, for me, it's like both. It's like arguing or discussing with another, or even in my own mind about my life situation or circumstances. With the other, why not? You were saying, you know, you're asking why not go there. It just, arguments or discussions. Arguments definitely seems more violence. There's more violence or aggression involved, and makes the other one's ego also come up. So that leads to disharmony and away from God energy or peace. And even discussions, I know sometimes my mind or ego thinks it's being barely knowledgeable, or it's somehow proving a point, or I don't know, it still seems an ego agenda in the end. So I'm not quite even sure where conversation then or kind communication would land in this moment, but still just noticing that, yeah, discussions can feel also with the other like too much or brings about disharmony. And then in myself, it just seems like I lose the presence of God, because I can just get stuck in a loop, especially if it's arguing against reality, or it's about a desire of some kind, or even grappling with a problem in my mind. Everything the mother says, like not to run around in one's mind, but it's that, like, instead of doing that, to remember God, because peace would come and a better chance of the right, an indication of the right thing to be done, or the right knowledge, I guess. Yes.
Yes, yeah. Also, most of the times I feel that in our discussions or arguments with people, uh, we never really, very rarely do we reach a common ground or a harmony or a total harmony. Very rarely. And the reason is quite obvious, because most of the times, not all of the times, but most of the times, we are operating from the limited ego consciousness. And the ground that I am coming from, the other ego cannot see, and I cannot see the ground the other one is coming from. So somewhere, no matter how many hours or years we may argue or discuss or try to prove that there is a common ground, somehow very rarely is a harmony discovered, which is mutual on both sides. So that also, again, Sri Aurobindo and Mother have beautifully, through their words, shared that if we want total harmony, if we want integrality in our life, we have to touch base with our heights of self. Limiting, being limited in our ego consciousness, we can never have true harmony in either our day-to-day family life or at a larger level. And we are rarely spending enough time in order to get in touch with that higher reality in us. We are rarely spending time there. We are rarely spending time in our silences, so that we are not operating out of ego consciousness, but out of that bigger and truer harmony. So that also tells us that there is, it's like a time wasted whenever we enter into these arguments, try to prove my point, wherever argument is there, always we are trying to prove that something is right. And usually we are trying to prove that I am right, and we always land up in more confusion, more entanglement, owing to those arguments. Very rarely a harmonious kind of a resolution is achieved. And I feel that we, instead of trying to work out things in the outer domain, first we have to resolve it inside of us, and then, as Raviji was sharing, in our actions the harmony will work it out. While we go the other way, we try to fix the things on the outside, while in our inside we are totally unresolved, and that never really brings us to a greater harmony. So yes, I just kind of took forward from where Swapna left, so please go ahead and share anything that comes. Yeah.
Yes, Monica. Oh.
So who wants to share? Please go ahead. Shweta, you want to share? Go ahead. Uli can go maybe after you. Yeah.
Yeah, so I have one question. So this I understand, do not argue or discuss, think only one thing, remember God with total devotion. What I want to know is that how valid it is for a growing up child, because that is when the ego starts to develop. And I personally feel that with my children, when they bring up a point and they discuss and they argue, because they are in that age, they argue, and because I am open to learning, I'm learning a lot and I'm becoming a better person, I'm evolving. But if they wouldn't have argued and thought about this, then how would it help the other person to grow? So can you help me understand that?
Yes, yes, absolutely. So, Shweta, the age group that we are here today, it's an age group who has a developed ego. While the
Oh,
age group that you are talking of, the ego is still under development.
Okay.
Yeah, so Sri Aurobindo and Mother also share, and many masters have also shared, people who have written on integral education, that ego has to be first developed.
Yeah.
Ego has a purpose. It's not for no reason that the ego is there, because ego functions as a kind of a centralizing thing. You know, I centralize myself around my ego, that okay, this is what I like, these are my preferences, you know, this is my past, so I centralize myself around my ego. Now for the age group that you are sharing, I think it's beautiful that you are entering into discussions and arguments, because there the point is different, because there the moment we enter into a healthy discussion, we actually make the mind supple, we make the mind flexible, as you are sharing that you are benefiting from those discussions. So Mother and Sri Aurobindo say that it is good to develop an enlightened ego, in the sense an ego which is supple, flexible, plastic, elastic, and learning, you know, like wants to learn and wants to grow. Now, what we were discussing here, again, context to context, because the age group that we are in, we are on our path that we have developed egos. And our egos mostly land up in arguments and entanglements and troubles. So we are on the path of now surrendering the ego and now ending the story of me and mine, so that the divine work can be done.
Okay, but
But
I have, sorry, can
yes,
I
yes,
ask something?
yeah,
One
please.
more question. Even with, people of our age group or even elder people, like very elder people. Now, I also feel that if they go by this, way that they don't want to answer, or they don't, so you don't get your answers, like if it's about communication and discussion, but if they go by this, you don't argue, don't discuss, so that is where also you don't get closures, because they are not ready to communicate. How will you explain that?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, see, you would have seen that, for example, the thing that you shared, that my child wants to discuss, and when I am discussing with the child, then I am learning. So, both the parties are benefiting from the discussion. Now, many a times it happens, especially with adults, that we are like a wall. I say that I am okay with myself and I don't want to learn further. Yeah, so we mostly become like a wall. Now when one party is wanting to discuss, as you are sharing, that it's good to discuss, and I'm absolutely with you, but the other party is not really very receptive and willing to challenge the limiting beliefs that we may be holding, then it is a like a you are actually hitting your head on a wall. There no growth, no learning would happen, you would just find yourself hurt again and again. So it is about those little contexts where we end up into arguments for no good reason. You know, no expansion is happening, no party is ready to learn through the discussion. But if there is a receptivity in the parties who are discussing, then there is a whole different game altogether. You know, then you are learning through me, I am learning through your questions, discussions, then we both are benefiting with each other. And this cannot be called vad vivad, this cannot be called argument, it can be called a extrapolation or exploration. Argument we call when have a stand which is a very strong stand, and the other party also has a stand, and we are just hitting on each other and trying to prove our stand. I think that is what we call as argument.
So that is what it is referring to. It's not about like communication.
Not about communication. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. I'm
Okay.
glad that you brought this up. Yeah. And mostly what happens when we enter into arguments where it's not a discussion really, but just a kind of a ego game going on, trying to prove my point, there we suffer. You know, there we have stress in the mind after the discussion is over, and we have heaviness in the chest because we were not able to prove the point, or the other person said something which was insulting in nature. So all that, you know, misery goes on inside. While if there are a few people who want to truly discuss and reflect and maybe expand their horizons of mind, then it cannot be called as Vad Vivad.
Yeah, but Monica, if your intention is to grow in a relationship, and then if you just give up and don't talk, and then because the person is important to you, so then how do you like help grow with that person? So
So your premise, Shweta, is that if you do not talk, there is no growth.
exactly.
But is that true?
Because I don't know, I'm coming from a point of empathy and many things that if somebody is closed, so, and like your intention is to just communicate and reach there, so then how would you do it? You
Yeah, so
just
mother has shared extensively on these questions that you are referring to, and many a times what helps is not to communicate. Many a times, because what I am feeling, because I am feeling stressed that I am not able to communicate in a relationship, and I am feeling stressed that if I do not communicate, how would this grow? How would we expand as a in a relationship? But
right.
the premise that I have is that only with communication there is growth. Have you questioned that premise also? So we are saying that in if communication is not there, there is no growth. But I think we have to check there.
Okay, I think then it comes from ego only. What you want to seek from that person comes from your ego, I think.
Yeah. So I have my limiting beliefs of this is how growth will happen.
Right.
But maybe the divine will has another plan.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Please,
One,
anyone?
yes, one thing I want to say. Can I start?
Raviji, you need not ask. Just unmute and share, please. Yeah.
I think in this Doha, the Kabir ji is saying we should focus on karma on this Doha. We are discussing the other things, but in my opinion, he is emphasizing on the karma. The main thing is karma. So we should talk more about the karma. Thank you.
Thank you, Raviji. Raviji, thoughts are also sukshma karma. So you cannot exclude विचार, है ना? जब हम अभी विचारों की बात कर रहे थे कि मेरा विचार चल रहा है और आप एक विचार अपना शेयर करना चाह रहे हैं किसी से.
Okay.
Thoughts are also सूक्ष्म कर्म. कर्म का ये नहीं है कि आप अगर जब तक आप खेत में हल नहीं जोतेंगे वो कर्म नहीं है. कर्म यहाँ पे भी हो रहा है. This is also कर्म. So yeah, I feel that also needs to be shared and reflected.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So anyone, whoever is ready, please go ahead. Yeah, Julie, you had unmuted earlier. You want to share right now?
Yes, Monica, I was agreeing with Ravi in the way that he was using karma yoga to distill that, and see the child as God himself and a young God, or, in that way. If the child feels that, then he has a different reaction from the mother's non-reaction in that way. So I can see that the point of that, because if you're working in any task, whether it be with your children or the workplace, to be focused on the task and be devoted to that task. At the minute you leave that devotion, the task becomes messy, not as smooth. And I think the children do pick up on that as well. in the voice of the mother if it's not smooth, or be it, I agree with you with adults discussing, having an argument in discussion, because as you say, they've both got their strong egos, and silence can be golden too. But, some people do want to push for to win, or whatever it might be, to win the argument. Yes, I think a pause is good at that point, and become an observer, and it does quieten the whole situation, because a response, for every action, there's a reaction in that way. If there was no reaction, then the action would fail in that, not fail, but be softer, more controllable, maybe, with, not that you want to control the situation, but to step back and be the observer of the other person's behavior, and see it, and that, it's a devotion, in karma, working in that way. Yes, you only have to take your mind off a task and it becomes messy, I feel, from my experience anyway. So, yeah, that's all. I really wanted to just agree on that, but
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
You.
The intention behind wanting to communicate, I think I have also reflected in my relationship and communications, that the intention behind my communication with the other person is right. What is the intention? The intention is that, can we work in a greater harmony? Can we work? I think we can talk about it and get it resolved. But most of the time, what happens, owing to the ego conflicts or the standpoints, rigid standpoints that we have, that talking and communication, they rarely become a beautiful help while we are wanting to achieve harmony. So at that point of time, it becomes very important for me to take a pause, as Julie was also sharing, step back and actually delve deeper in yourself, in your still being, in the stillness of your being, and allow the working of the intelligence of nature, the higher intelligence, to take its course, rather than me being the doer and trying to fix out things in the environment. And if I am not there, nothing will happen. So I think this sense of doership is also so heavy on us at times, that if I am not trying to communicate with the other person, the growth will not happen. So that, again, as Shweta was also sharing, I think that is just coming from my own mental rigidity, that how a greater harmony or greater progress can be achieved only by discussing and only by talking. But most of the times that becomes a harmful thing, more talking and more communication. At times one has to just leave the dots unconnected for a period of time, and then things change, things evolve. Time is very powerful. It does something to us. Yeah. So anything more at this couplet?
Monica, I had just a small observation to share. So, I have been a very, as shared earlier, I've been a very logical, outcome focused kind of a person for the better part of my life. And I'm here today because, somewhere being that way doesn't, ends up leaving me feel empty handed. So the thought that's coming to me is that being logical, I have oftentimes indulged in, so for me, from where I see it, it's like a very logical representation of facts from my end, but sometimes I'm sure the other person is experiencing it as trying to prove my point, or even borderline argumentative and all of that. So I'm sure that has happened many times in the past. But the point I'm trying to make is that I feel that that whole thought about mind is a tool, right? Like, mind is a tool and we should be able to deploy it as a tool as we deem fit. But I feel that when we get carried away with these vad vivad and arguments, a mind becomes the master. It's no longer a tool. And that's what is the reminder that, okay, you know what, like, you're my tool and I choose not to use you at this time, and I pull back. So, and I think I'm in that journey myself, of I find myself, I catch myself, and I take 2 steps backwards, because sometimes, like, a step backward is actually moves you forward. So yeah, I just wanted to share that thought with you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, Aditi. In fact, I was just going through a few lines from, just I'll share with all of you, from Life Divine, where Sri Aurobindo has shared something at this only, that how the superficial personality that we are, the superficial mind, the superficial movement of emotions that we are, it is nothing but the tip of the iceberg which we are not aware of. And when we actually stop, when we step back, then we are able to, if we are able to, at times we are able to, at times other times we are not, we are still engaged in the surface consciousness, then we become aware of our deeper reality, which is totally kind of hidden from us. So the thing that you were sharing, that it's good to take a step back from the activity of the mind, so that you get in touch with something deeper, something greater, which also is yours. So yes, the mind is a tool which is mine, which is given to me as a gift, but there is also a lot of things and unknown, hidden realities of me which are lying unused, untapped. So I'll just share a few lines here on this, and then we can move on. Just a second. Yeah. So he says, he talks about the hidden parts of the being, and one part is subliminal and the other part, he says, subconscious. If the subliminal and subconscious may be compared to a sea which throws up the waves on our surface mental existence. So he's saying that the hidden part of the being is throwing up surface waves, and those surface waves are our surface movements, the movements of thoughts, the movements of surface emotions. That's how it throws up waves. It only shows a little bit of what it has truly. If subliminal and subconscious may be compared to a sea which throws up waves on our surface mental existence, the superconscious, that our fullness, the divine, if we can say, the superconscious may be compared to an ether which constitutes, contains, overroofs, inhabits, and determines the movements of the sea and its waves. Now, if we look at this little 2 3 lines, so it actually gave me goosebumps, that we only are aware of a little mental surface movement, a little emotional ups and downs, and maybe some little sensations of the body, but there is so much which is untapped and we are not aware of it. So when we take a step back from these mental and emotional movements, that is where we go, we have the capacity to go back into the depth of our being, which is lying totally hidden from our conscious view. And that's where I think Aditi just touched upon it, that maybe it takes us forward. So although I'm stepping back from the mind and emotions in maybe nothingness and blankness, but when I'm ready to move again, I see that it has taken me forward. How did it happen? Because I did not resolve anything mentally. I took a step back from the mental and emotional domain. And even then, going deeper in myself, as if I feel after some time that it has moved me forward. So there is a power, lying in those recesses of our being, which usually we are not able to touch, because most of the times we are on the surface of our consciousness. Yeah. So just thought of connecting it here with these lines. Yeah. So if this is over, if you have anything to share at this couplet, please share. Otherwise, we can just go ahead. Yeah. Okay, so let us take this one up then. अपने पहरे जागिए, ना परे रहिए सोए, ना जानो छिन एक में किसका पहरा होए. So here it's a couplet, I would say, about vigilance, about being alert of what you are letting entry to in your consciousness and what you are ruminating, like jugali jo karte hain, what you are ruminating upon. So he says that remain awake at all times. Do not sleep at this time. No one knows the moment who will grab this time. So the translation is not really great. It's just taken up from internet. So it says that be vigilant to your domain, to the farm. Be very, very vigilant to the farm. Do not keep on sleeping. Be like an awake guard to your farm. ना जानो छिन एक में किसका पहरा हुए. Because if you are not aware, you are not vigilant enough, then you would not even know, and the people from outside or anything from outside will come into your farm and he will be capturing your domain, your area. So reflect upon it in any which way, and then we can share our reflections. So I think that it's connecting more to vigilance, the thoughts and emotions that I keep on ruminating upon and entertaining, not even knowing that they are actually disturbing my inner poise. Yeah? So I'm not able to reject and eliminate those thoughts and movements. And then something else comes and captures my being, and I'm not the king anymore. I'm the other thing that captured the area is the king now of my being. So let us pause and then we can share our reflections.
Playing. Yeah, can I share? Yeah.
Please go ahead. Yeah.
So does it talk about being vigilant when like you're trying to play the victim card and actually inviting the pain body, and then you actually know that it doesn't feel good in any way, and the expansion that you regularly feel, that also goes away, and when you later reflect, it didn't feel good anyway. Is it that?
Yeah, I think hinting towards that, absolutely. Yes, Shweta. So अपने पहरे जागिए, ना पड़े रहिए सोए, ना जानो छिन एक में किसका पहरा होए. Yeah, so again, as Shweta connected the dot, one of the dots, that most of the time we find ourselves entertaining those thoughts which are actually very stressful. They are not really helping us towards more peace and progress. Although they can be used, the phase can be used, every failure can be used towards greater progress. But most of the times we find ourselves that we feel that I will gain something if I entertain these thoughts. There is something that I will get if I ruminate upon these thoughts and emotions. And most of the time, mostly, those thoughts and emotions, if I go on ruminating upon them, they give me more stress and constriction in the body. As Shweta was sharing, they activate the ego and pain consciousness. And it is not really a help that I do to myself by ruminating constantly about those thoughts. So I think that kind of a vigilance here is being talked about, that anything that tells you, that triggers you in a different kind of a way, and we know how we are feeling, whether we are feeling this is going into a right direction, or whether we are feeling this is taking me into a not very expanded direction. We all know we have an internal compass which can judge. So even not wantingly, we find ourselves ruminating again and again about maybe a person, maybe a past, maybe some coming future, owing to our attachments, obviously. And most of the time, it does us harm than it does good. Yeah. Now, there is another thing that I would like to mention here, that when we are learning something new, that also gives us discomfort. For example, if I'm learning to ride a new bike, or a bike for the first time that I sit on the bike, although I will be excited, I will also be a little nervous. I'll not be completely myself. I'll be struggling and maybe a bit in discomfort. So that discomfort and the discomfort of ruminating upon thoughts which are unnecessary, though those are two different kind of discomforts, and both have to be actually separated, because there is a discomfort which is auspicious discomfort, which whenever I expand my horizons, I enter into a kind of a discomfort, but I know that this is good for me. And then there is a discomfort where I just enter into those domains where actually I should not be there. It is just giving me more stress and making me more heavy, and yet I find myself there. So also want to share context to context. The discomfort is also different, so one cannot say that all the discomforts we should be away from, because then there will be no progress at all. There are discomforts which are auspicious in nature, but only I would know whether this is auspicious one, or this is where I should not be there. Yeah, so please share your reflections.
Yeah, so can I share? Yeah, so I want to say that they're so entangled, Monica, like, because I mean, ultimately you'll reach a point where you'll understand this, but till then you have to entertain this, and only then that will happen. So how do you draw a line? Like,
So, Shweta, actually, it appears that if I am entertaining a thought and I end up feeling really sad and bad, and where we go, it feels that it is a failure. That's what it feels, that I failed, I was not vigilant. But in Savitri, there is one line where Sri Aurobindo says, the supreme diplomat makes use of every failure for a greater rise. So, although I have not been vigilant, I have fallen deep into a trap of ruminating upon thoughts which I should not have been entertaining. And once I have done that enough,
yeah,
my own experiences we actually will make me more convinced that I actually now don't want to be there.
exactly.
So it is very important to go through those experiences and have the taste of that poison. Otherwise, I will not be convinced that I should not be there.
Right. Yeah. So this journey, like when to be vigilant, is like, you will just know because you've reached that point. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think one area where I like to stress upon from time to time, only because I personally feel that it helps me also when I talk about it, or do experimentation with it. Changing the inner dialogue. Ravi ji was talking about karm ki baat karo, kaam ki baat karo, and we don't realize that when we are thinking, it is a subtle form of karma. We cannot exclude the thinking from our conscious domain, and hence it becomes almost a responsibility to take care of my inner dialogue. And if we become conscious of it, we will see, for most of us, not all of us, that most of the time the thoughts are going on in our head which are just not very healthy thoughts. They just pull us down again and again. And can I become conscious of those thoughts which I am ruminating upon, and can I transform those because Mother and Sri Aurobindo again have talked about power of thought and power of imagination. So if there is a resolution that I want in my relationships or work life or family life, and all negative thoughts are coming to my head, can I make it completely transformed? In the sense, the moment I see that I'm getting worried about particular thing, immediately I change the dialogue and I say, the divine knows the best and the divine will guide me towards the right way. The divine is guiding me towards the right way. Because the moment I say this to myself, immediately I feel a relaxation instead of a constriction. And I see that I have more strength and power to go forward in my journey. So I think this thing also needs to be taken care of, rather than just focusing on the karma, the grosser karma. Yes, Raviji, please share.
Sister, truly speaking, as I am understanding and I am feeling, uh, there are two types of karma. One type of karma you are talking that we are discussing in a room or in a webinar. But I am 101% sure, but don't take it otherwise. The Kabir ji is saying, in every yogi and every person is saying, the karma, I am talking about the karma from outside the drawing room or from outside the room or in the market or in the field. We are talking about that karma. Because if we are talking 100 webinars, but that is not good, not better than the karma in the market or in the field. Please discuss this, please think, and deep thinking, please think deeply on this. We should and we should work in the field. That is the main karma, as I feel.
So what is field according to you, Raviji?
Field means ki you go to the public. If just suppose we are talking about the harmony, and harmony we are talking since last 5 months or 1 year. But when my servant come and he or she says something else, and we lose our temper, so all the 1 year working of the inside room is failure. The main karma is harmony with that servant, or harmony that with businessman, or harmony with other persons in the market or in the field, outside the room, outside the in your office, in your business, in your service. So, and if you are going to purchase in the market, are you going anywhere, are you talking on, you are driving or you discussing, that is the main karma. The main work is all 99% of the public losing their temperament on that time, and he talks about that he reads books, so many thousands of books he is reading, but this is applicable especially on me. I am zero. I am always in gussa. I am always in anger. What is the benefit of this discussion on, although I am a member of this group and I will be the member of in this group, but the result is zero and zero and zero.
रवि जी बिल्कुल आपके साथ हूँ, और आपकी इंटेंशन मैं समझ रही हूँ कि एक तरह से एक फ्रस्ट्रेशन फील होती है कि इतना डिस्कस करने के बावजूद भी जब मैं किसी इंसान से बात करता हूँ तो वही गुस्सा जो आप बता रहे हैं, तो
you can talk in English, so everybody will get benefit of this.
Okay. So what I was saying, Raviji, is that I can understand your frustration also, and I think the intention behind this frustration is absolutely valid, which says that I actually want to have harmony in my workplace, with my people that I interact with my family members that I interact with, right? And yeah, we see that we fail again and again. We fail again and again. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think this is individually for each one of us to talk to our own being, that what is working and what is not working. Because these discussions, for example, may work for some people and may totally be useless for other people, depending on their natures and receptivity. So I am absolutely with you, but only you can know what has worked for you in the workplace or the field that you talk about, the Kurukshetra that you talk about, and what has not worked for you. Only you would know, and only I would know what has worked for me and what has not worked for me. Yeah, but this does not exclude that we should not be having talks and discussions, because anyway, throughout 24/7, you are talking in your head. You cannot say that you're not talking in your head. So if you are immersing your mind in those talks, then we can also immerse our mind in these talks, which are revelatory in nature or open a few knots in our being. So I'm totally with you and absolutely understand your frustration. And I think it's that's why Sri Aurobindo says that human nature is like a dog's tail. It's hard to change it, and yet we are here trying to do our bit. Yeah. So yes, Swapna, please go ahead.
Yes, well, partly to just what you both are discussing about and to address Raviji, like for me, this session, for example, is something I really look forward to in my whole week, because it allows me to touch into a space and a depth that is closer to God. And then that percolates into my relationships. It brings a level of calmness and a quietness in my mind, or just a nearness to the divine. So I find that really worthy, because that's the energy in the end that I can take then beyond my mind and beyond my inner dialogue into my relationships, or into even my most challenging relationships. And then in terms of these lines, if I may, what I see here, I'm reminded of a passage that I read just this morning in Sundat Path, where the mother's talking about coming out. It was about the ego, coming out of the ego. And she was saying how when one is in the ego, I'll say I, because I related to the passage, then the whole universe is running around me, right? Or when the ego is present. And everything is seen in relation to ego, me, at the center of it. And she was talking about then, as I understood it, going into a space which is, she used the word like non-existent or inexistent. And so like stepping back and this remain awake at this hour is this when the ego, you know, when like no one knows the moment who will grab this time, is when ego comes in and just plays havoc, whether it's in my mind or with another. And then the whole world, my surroundings, my relationships, my work, everything is seen with me in the center. And do not sleep, because then the mother went on in that passage to say, eventually one needs to see the whole universe, the world, like a mirror from an absolutely still place. And then it can really be seen for what it is. And how I link it into this, or even the last doha, is, oh, you know, if I can see things for how they really are, then I can see how the other and the other's point of view, whether they're a child or an adult, really is, but not by putting my ego in the center, not by, you know, from this reference point of I, like the sun in the center of my world, but really just from this still place, seeing everything as it is. Then I'm not so invested also in arguing or something. And then I can also hear the divine, whether just, is it a time to be quiet? Or, as I've also read, one becomes an instrument. Then I can hear, is it a time to say something, speak? And all that is this remain awake, you know, this being vigilant to, am I putting myself at the very center of everything, and which then becomes ego, and then my mind and my thoughts are that way, and then my interactions, be it with a servant or another, or a co-worker, or my partner, is that, or am I just able to respect? I think I can see I can have much more respect in what Mother was indicating about just being able to be like a silent mirror and see things for how they really are. And yeah, for me, these two lines seem to tie in very well. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you much for sharing, Swapna. Yeah, absolutely. No, I think even I think I could absolutely hear the almost like a frustration when Raviji shared that why we are not able to put out of all our spirituality in the workplace. And actually, it is a matter for wonder and amazement. And I feel that I personally, when I look at myself, I feel that we fail from time to time to just be like a flower. Mother shares that be like a flower, blossom like a flower. But this sense of doership spoils the game. It just tells me that I am the one who has to do something. I am the one who is responsible for all this. I am the one who is going to make this happen or change the people around me. And there we lose the vulnerability and innocence of a flower blossoming. And if we are able to just in our own inner journey blossom like a flower, which will happen organically, we would not even realize how many lives would be touched, just like how a flower touches all the lives without even wanting to touch the lives. I think there, the innocence that is there in the flower, the self absorption that is there in a flower, uh, I think so much to learn from that also, again and again, from time to time, because we keep on forgetting again and again. And the focus shifts to the outer situations and outer people all the time. Yeah. So, anything more? Anyone? So I'll just, if not anything more, I'll share a beautiful one translated by Tagore. It's a bhajan by Kabir, a song by Kabir, and translated by Tagore here. It says, "Chanda jhalke yahi ghat mahi." The moon shines in my body, within my body. So I'm just sharing here the English translation by Tagore, and I'll put it in the chat window. The the Hindi one by Kabir. Huh? Just a second. Just a second. This one is the Hindi version. I'll put it in the chat window. And Kabir, this is the version by Tagore. So I have put the English one in chat window also, because in the web page it's not very clear. There is a bit of a distraction here in the middle. So I'll just read it out for all of us. The moon shines in my body, but my blind eyes cannot see it. The moon is within me, and so is the sun. The unstruck drum of eternity is sounded within me, but my deaf ears cannot hear it. So long as man clamors for the I and the mine, me and my story, his works are as naught. When all love of the I and the mine is dead, then the work of the Lord is done. For work has no other aim than the getting of knowledge. And when that comes, the work is put away. The flower blooms for the fruit. When the fruit comes, the flower withers. The musk is in the deer, but it seeks it not within itself. It wanders in the quest of grass. So let us take a few moments. If you want to read it, better to read it in the chat window, because here it's not clear on the web page. So I'll also put another sharing in just a second. Yeah, thanks for joining, Aditi. Bye bye. Yeah, so whenever we are ready, just feel free to share your reflections on this.
So I think the whole essence of what we were discussing since the beginning is here, like, till we get beyond that I and mine, you know, so it's very beautiful. Yeah, we will be entangled in this till we realize that, like, your essence and your energy is beyond what you think as I and mine. It is for a larger purpose and it will be used for a larger purpose. Yeah.
These lines in the second last paragraph, the flower blooms for the fruit. When the fruit comes, the flower withers. I think this, again, I would connect it with, there may be other connections. I would connect it with when mother shares, ego is the helper, ego is the bar. So ego takes us to a certain point. It gives us a transitional individuality. But when the true divine individuality is ready to shine forth from within, then the ego has to wither, to go away. It has no place whatsoever. And again, if you go up, he says, when all love of the I and the mine, me, my story, my ideas, my opinions, my emotions, as I think Swapna was sharing, that everything revolves around the ego, as if the ego is the center of the whole existence. When all love of the I, the mine is dead, then the work of the Lord is done. So then the divine work begins. And Sri Aurobindo and Mother also say that nirvana, or liberation from the ego, is not the last step in integral yoga. It is the first step. That is where we start with, because ego does not take us that far. Once the task of the ego is over, the flower withers, the fruit, the divine manifestation, our true individuality, our psychic individuality, then that comes ahead, and ego has no place in the game now anymore. Yeah, so that also connected me with that.
Lovely.
Yeah, so anyone who is ready to share, please unmute and share.
Yeah, may I? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, please go ahead, Uniji.
I think the one part, at least one part of it, directly connects to the previous Kabir Doha about, he says, don't sleep, look at now. Now, the importance of now is like what we discussed during the last session of Tagore's poem. Uh, where do thoughts come from? We discussed it last time. It comes from the past or from the fear of the future. So when you don't have that, we are able to do what is required now and what is right. Then you know what exactly is happening and you tend to do the right thing. You start looking inwards and you don't look outwards for satisfaction. You have full confidence in what we are doing in terms of the karma part of it, which Raviji was saying. Then you know what I am doing is right. You are not constrained by the failures of the past or the fears of the future. Therefore, you find the truth and the right thing that in what you're doing. Therefore, like the deer who doesn't have to, without realizing that the musk is in its head and it starts searching all over for the grass alone, one tends to do the right thing, totally contented. And that is where the truth really comes from, that realization. And in that realization, there is no I. There is only the truth. You can call it as love, you can call it as God, you can call it as self, depends on our dispensation. So that thought is what is captured here. And to my mind, it directly connects to the previous Doha. Thank you.
Yes, beautiful. Thank you for sharing, Uniji. Yeah. I think this is something very beautiful that you kind of remarked upon. The last one also, the musk is in the deer, but it seeks it not within itself. And this is, I think, one can say in concentrated form that this is why we suffer mostly, because we think that if something happens in the external situation, that will bring me contentment, and hence we always keep on running after contentment, seeking after contentment, and it is nowhere to be found. And even if we find it, it is only temporarily that we find it, and then again the discontentment arises. While if the truth flowers in the being, if the truth blossoms in the being, then everything that we do, or the possibility is that the most of the things that we do will be coming from a state of contentment, as Unniji was sharing, and not from a state of that I am incomplete, and if I complete this, if I do this task, if I have a relationship with that person, that will make me complete, because that becomes the, our pain in the ass almost, if I can say. And that's where the mind keeps on running and being stressed, trying to fix the outer relationships or things, and in that we just lose even if a little bit of peace is there in the being. So doing things from the place of love and truth and contentment within is where the new game working with for the Lord starts, where he says, when all love of the I and the mine, me and my story, when you do not need anything, you are not craving for a contentment from the external situations, because you have found the contentment within, then the work of Lord is done. So this is I would say this is a invitation towards a new kind of a life, which a life lived from contentment rather than for contentment and happiness and joy, which is absolutely goes together with contentment. Yeah.
But Monica, I would like to know if these are small doses that you understand, or like you really reach that, like, or is it like slowly you go back and forth with this because you understand, then you know like get back into like karma, then again you understand, and how, why does it go back and forth? Why do, when you know it, you've understood it at one point, why doesn't it stay?
Why do you think, Shweta, why doesn't it stay? If we have really understood it, why doesn't it stay?
Uh, like the flower you were saying, that was so beautiful because the flower and how it blooms and makes its environment, it just adds. Flower is not thinking about anything, it's just there, and it contributes by itself, and others can feel the joy because of the flower. So I get this, okay, I understand this, but why I really understand this, but why doesn't it stay all the time? And like there are these few moments like when it like really takes you back. So is it that you've really not got it and you need to I don't know, like
Yeah, yeah.
why does it go back?
Absolutely with you, and I'm sure we all resonate, this back and forth movement that you are referring to. And Mother has shared that it's not completely a back and forth movement, it is in spirals. So it's like, just like you never put your feet back in the same river again, the river has changed. The river is a ever moving river. You If you stepped in the river and then came out and then you step in again, you have changed, and the river also has changed. The river is also not the same. So we may think that, why do I keep coming to the same point again and again, or the same ego again and again? But the thing is that a progression is happening, but it is so gradual that we think that we are at the same point again. Yeah. And one thing I want to read here from the Mother. Mother says, never seek a support elsewhere than the divine. Never seek satisfaction elsewhere than in the divine. Never seek the satisfaction of your needs in anyone except the divine. Never for anything at all. All your needs can be satisfied only by the divine. All your weaknesses can be borne and healed by the divine. He alone is capable of giving you what you need in everything, always. And if you try to find any satisfaction or support or help or joy, heaven knows what, in anyone else, you will always fall on your nose one day, and that always hurts, sometimes even hurts very much. So I feel that the reason for back and forth is that we again, owing to our old habits, we again try to find satisfaction somewhere outside. And that becomes the reason for the next fall, or the next fall, or the next fall. And
True.
because this life force within us, which wants to go out, it's not properly channelized, and it wants to go out. And the moment it wants to go out, again expectation demands from life situations, from people, and then again I fall back on my nose and I'm wondering, why did I do it again? So I think it's almost like we have to learn slowly to contain this life energy in this vessel that we call the body, and not kind of put it out.
Okay, right. Thank you.
Yeah, if there are any reflections, please go ahead.
Yeah, Monica, if you could scroll back up to the line about the drum. Yes, these lines particularly meant a lot to me. The unstruck drum of eternity is sounded within me, but my deaf ears cannot hear it. And it links into also what you were just saying. It's like the minute I forget that the divine is always there. It's inside me, it's available to me, it's helping me, it's guiding me. And then there's this sense of how the other speaker was saying, you know, about why do I always forget and why do I end up in pain and suffering? And your passage about exactly going out. And these lines, like going out to another or a situation, you know, to fulfill me. And it's like this constant loop of these lines seem so beautiful, you know, this unstruck drum of eternity. It's like it hasn't even been hit, right? So it's not even making a sound, and yet it's sounded within me. So there's like a vibration, a stillness to the eternal's presence. And this, but my deaf ears cannot hear it, is like all those, it echoes perfectly all those moments where I forget, that I go into amnesia, that absolutely run back out, you know, somewhere out in the world, expecting the satisfaction and the stillness of this unstruck drum of eternity, you know, expecting that to come from others. Yeah, it's just bringing me, these lines just bring me back to something that's just resonating and vibrating inside, and it's full of space and silence and needs constant remembrance. So all the lines, the dohas we've looked at today as well, you know, this staying alert, remembering, bringing myself back, not having the me, mine, I, because even when I look to the other, it comes from this place of, you know, you are like my partner or my father, my mother, my sister, this my, I, you know, that's when the expectation then comes in. And actually, I forget that they are also the divine, you know, and just to see it all from that level. It seems like a constant need of vigilance and a constant meditation or awareness on this, on the divine, on the eternity.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Swapna. You know, the line here below the unstruck drum, so long as man clamors for the I and mine, his works are as naught. It means that they are no karma actually. The whatever work or action I am doing, it is just adding me the burden of karma rather than resolving me of the burden of karma. Whenever I do works coming from this beggar or ego within me, which always wants and wants and wants and wants and wants. You know, in one of the couplet, Kabir says, चाह गई चिंता मिटी मनवा बेपरवाह जिनको कुछ नहीं चाहिए वो शाहन के शाह. So he says the real king or the real master or emperor is the one who does not demand now anything from this existence. And that, I would say, is the pinnacle of extreme self-absorption, that I am so deeply content with my own self, with my own being, that there is no satisfaction that I am craving for from the external world. I think, again, something which is our higher possibility, highest possibility. And we all have the birthright, I would say, to taste that kind of a beauty. It is a possibility, I believe, yeah, that there is complete self-absorption, and we are not living out of the beggar tendency or the ego in wanting to satisfy or complete or gratify ourselves, because we are working out of this sense of fulfillment and contentment within the being. And then the true work starts, then the divine work starts, then only I can be one drop of poison less in the world and can contribute in whatever capacity one can. And then, you know, this excessive focus on work also, because I would say here, for work has no other aim than the getting of knowledge. And when he says knowledge, it definitely means self-knowledge, self-realization, knowing who we truly are. For work has no other aim. He says work has no other aim than the getting of the self-knowledge. When that comes, then the work is put away. Then work, actually the external work becomes almost like non-essential to my being. It's not that I would not be doing it, it's not that I would not be engaged in it, but it would be non-essential, that I'm not completing my incompletions through that work, which usually happens when we enter into any kind of work, that I'm wanting something through that work. So this was also something very beautiful, that work has no other aim than the getting of self knowledge, or and when that comes, then the work is put away. The flower blooms for the fruit. When the fruit comes, the flower withers. The flower has no importance when the fruit is in its place. Yeah. So again, beautiful lines. One can reflect upon this later also. Yeah. So if there is anything more, please share. Else we can maybe wind up the session here.
Aniket, can I just add one small point?
Yeah. Please go ahead.
This is regarding this work when you mentioned. Recently, I heard somebody speaking, which I appreciated very much. He was saying that each of us have work to do. Without work, you don't have existence in this physical universe. Therefore, the meaning of the work in that sense is that we must be doing what we do with full application and dedication. And in that moment, once we do that, that is equivalent to meditation. And you're not expecting anything from it. It is your duty, it is your dedication, your meditation. So that becomes part of your process. And it becomes, you are one with it. That's the way one should look at work. Whatever the work is, doesn't matter whether you're writing or tilling the land or selling and making money, doesn't matter what you're doing. The point is you're doing it with full application, full mind, full concentration, full meditation. That is the importance. We must, if we appreciate that, a lot of it will become suddenly clear.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Totally. Absolutely. I think usually the way our education system also is there, and the jobs and all are there, we take everything as a means to an end. That why am I doing work? I'm doing work because I can get money so that I can buy the home or the car or whatever. And there we just lose the beauty of being one with the work, as you are sharing. Absolutely with you. I think that's the perfect ideal way, and that is why the work should be there or in existence, that can we be one with the work, no matter whether it's jhadu, or as you were sharing, tilling the land, maybe writing something, tending to a child, anything. And that in oneness is also my gift there, because the reward that it gives you, when you are one with the work, that only oneself knows. We just know within ourselves the reward that we get by being one with the work. So thank you so much for bringing that up. Yeah. And then one is not seeking a reward after the work ends, because the reward is right there with me. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. I think that's a good point to close here. I think we can close here. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining and sharing or listening and sharing your thoughts and reflections. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Julie.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.